Hey, good morning or afternoon, everyone, on Orange Day. These are asynchronous days this week because of end of course exams for English 1 and 2. Speaking of end of course exams, ours is going to be coming up here pretty soon for U.S. history. I have our date down here that the U.S. history exam is going to be on May 4th. So what I've gone ahead and done is to go ahead and put our end of course exam review in today's folder in Schoology. When you open that up, you can download a copy of this. What you're going to find is that it has a nice overview of each era that we've studied so far or will continue to study. And there's a nice description of what happened during that particular time frame, and also specifics, important developments, issues, people, and so forth. And so I would just encourage you to start looking over that, and just it really is there to serve as just a reminder of places that we've been and issues that we have studied. There will be more formal reviews that we'll have as we approach, get closer to the exam date. So one thing I wanted to do today is really just to give us a quick introduction to where we are headed. And so when we look at this photograph, what we can see right here, that this is just a very busy railroad switching yard. And just want to use this as a visual. I think for the most part this year, we've had a pretty nice narrative and looking at just different eras in U.S. history, much as if we were on a train going down a single track. We'll make this stop at this one era in development, next stop this era, that development, and so forth. But as we get to post-war America, right, so the cursor right here would be the end of World War II. From the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, things got pretty complex for the United States. And so what we've done is really focus more on the theme and big development that was going on, rather than just taking that chronological approach. So for example, when World War II ended, we went left right here and began to focus on the Cold War. Right, so we're beginning to look at the Truman Doctrine, the Marshall Plan, and NATO, and the Korean War, and Vietnam. What we're going to do today is we're going to take our right-hand turn here and to begin to focus on things that happened inside of the United States in the decades that followed World War II. So at the end of this unit, we're going to be right around here. So we're going to link back up again, and then we'll begin to, we'll be able to take off again in more of that linear fashion that we have had so far. So just pay attention to the dates. So we're going back a little bit to 1945 and the end of World War II. And so again, our focus here is we're going to say goodbye to the Cold War, and we're just going to look at how the United States changed in the decades after World War II ended. So this, what we're going to focus on today is roughly going to take us from about 1945 to about 1961 here. So let's just think about for a second, World War II has ended, and so now we're at about 1945. So we have to consider some of the big concerns, right? What was going on before World War II? That was the Great Depression. So in a lot of people's minds, there were concerns that the Great Depression might return again now that World War II is over. So a couple of big things to consider here is that the United States is going to have to make this successful transition or reconversion from a wartime economy to a peacetime economy. And so that is going to really be the trick to help ensure a basis for more economic security that is going to lay ahead. Again, the big crises are over. The Depression is over. The war is over. Now we're looking to get onto a more stable life in the United States. So those are some of the bigger immediate concerns. When we look at this chart right here, what we're looking at are President Truman's approval ratings. And I just bring this up. We're not going to go through every little detail here, but this is when World War II ends, right? So 1945. And what we can see here is that there's just this zigzag pattern that's going to go on for the next several years, which just might be an indication that this was a very, very uneasy time, right? In the years, it was a very, jagged or rough time in the United States in the years following the end of World War II. Again, you're really going from this post-war transition to to hopefully a much more stable and secure life for many Americans. And so again, just kind of, he's popular, unpopular, a little bit better, not so good, a little bit better, not so good. But by the end of Truman's term, his approval rating is not very high at all. We have the loss of China right here. We have the Korean War, just a couple of things that have contributed to those lower approval ratings. But in 1952, this was an election year for the United States. And we can also tell from this that the mood of the country, the political mood of the country is also shifting. And the United States is going to elect Dwight Eisenhower. You might remember him as being one of the military leaders of World War II, overseeing D-Day and so forth. So we have Eisenhower right here, his vice president, Richard Nixon, who will become president a little bit later on. But they are going to preside over this era that becomes known as this affluent society. And that's really what we're going to focus on today, is just life in the United States in the 1950s. For many people, this was a very good time. But for others, this was not the best time, but they sought to change their status or places in society. So if you're not familiar with the term affluent, what it does mean is an abundance of money, property, and other material goods. So we're seeing this movement to the suburbs. There is a baby boom or a population explosion. This is also the beginning of car culture and consumerism in the United States as well. Oops, pardon me. Sorry about that. So that's really what we're going to focus on today. I just want to bring just a very brief introduction to where we are headed in the course, even though that we're not all able to meet together today as a class. So what I'll ask us to do is we can head on over to our Ed Puzzle assignment for today. The title of this is called Happy Days, and it is really going to take us through the Eisenhower era, or much of the 1950s in the United States. And we will pick back up when we all meet together again in a couple of classes. Y'all have a wonderful day, and I will have something for you for next block as well. Have a good one. Bye-bye.